The foothills of the eastern Himalayas are not known for silence. On most nights, the forest breathes in layers, cicadas trembling in the treetops, river stones grinding under the currents, and far above it all, the long rolling roar of a tiger staking its claim across the valley. Sound is the language of these mountains, a constant pulse of life announcing who hunts, who hides, and who survives. But some nights defy the rules of this place. Rangers stationed along the Indo-Burma corridor speak of an uncanny stillness that settles without warning, as if the entire forest collectively inhales and refuses to exhale. Birds stop calling. Barking deer freeze mid-stride. Even the wind seems to hesitate, caught between branches like a held breath. It is in these moments, they say, that he walks, a striped shadow slipping between sal trees, a pulse of movement without a single crack of underbrush, a presence felt before it is ever seen. They call him the Silent Stripe, a fully grown male tiger, known not for the thunder of his roar, but for the absolute absence of it. In a species defined by its voice, he is an anomaly, a contradiction, a king with no sound. The first reports were dismissed as exaggeration. A tiger that never roars. Senior officers laughed. Impossible. Tigers declare territory through vocal power. Their roars can travel more than 2 kilometers. A male that doesn't roar should lose ground, lose mates, lose dominance. Nature does not reward silence in a predator built for intimidation. And yet, this one thrives. Villagers in remote pockets whisper that when he enters the valley, livestock quiver but never cry out, that they find paw prints materializing near their farms, deep, deliberate, and frighteningly quiet. Some claim they've watched him cross an open field without disturbing a single blade of grass, as if the earth itself bends away to let him pass. No researcher has ever recorded his voice. No camera trap has captured so much as a growl, a snarl, or even the throaty chuff that tigers give when greeting their cubs. He moves without warning and leaves without trace. And so the forest waits, listening for the one thing it will never hear, a roar that does not exist. Long before the name the Silent Stripe reached conservation circles, his legend grew quietly among those who walk the forest every day. The first to speak of him were not scientists, but the forest guards, men and women who know the land by instinct, who can read the morning dew like scripture and recognize individual tigers by the rhythm of their footsteps. They began to notice something unusual during their patrols. Long stretches of days where the valley seemed unsettled, as if anticipating an invisible presence. Tracking teams soon found prints large, perfectly aligned, belonging to a powerful adult male, but the pattern was inconsistent. Unlike most males who patrol in looping circuits, this tiger's movements were unpredictable, almost erratic. Prints appeared in territories he should not have dared to enter, regions dominated by other males known for aggression. Yet there were no signs of confrontation, no torn earth, no claw marks on trees, no roars echoing through the valleys announcing a challenger. It was as if he passed through these lands without triggering the instinctive alarms of the forest. Then came the stories from the villages. Children who claimed they saw a tiger with moonlit stripes staring at them from the tree line without making a sound. An elderly farmer who swore that a massive tiger watched him repair his fence for several minutes, breathing evenly yet not a twig snapped beneath its paws. Some said the tiger moved like a shadow, trying to remember how to be an animal. When rangers finally captured the first clear footage of him, the video spread like wildfire among wildlife researchers. The tiger was large, exceptionally so, with deep orange fur washed in the dusk light and dark stripes that seemed to merge seamlessly with the forest's shadows. His posture was confident, almost regal, a dominant male by every physical metric. Yet the footage had an unsettling detail. He opened his jaws wide, the posture unmistakable, a territorial roar in the making. But no sound followed. The forest behind him remained still. Even the leaves did not shake. It was a roar formed in body, but denied by voice. Scientists were baffled. A tiger's roar is not optional. It is the cornerstone of its survival strategy. Without it, how did this male command territory? How did he court females? Why did rival males avoid him instead of challenging him? The guards were the first to give him a name that stuck. The Mute King, not merely a tiger without a voice, but a ruler who enforced his presence without ever announcing it. And in a landscape where dominance is measured by sound, a silent king is a mystery that no one was prepared to confront. In the natural order of tiger life, silence is not a strength, it is a liability. A male tiger claims his world through sound deep, rolling roars that ripple through the canopy, warning rivals and attracting mates. Yet this particular male defied every law carved by evolution. Wildlife biologists, after reviewing months of footage and ranger testimony, began constructing the first theories. Perhaps he suffered damage to his larynx. Injuries from snare wires or territorial fights can silence a tiger. But no scars were visible. His breathing was strong, and even his feeding patterns showed no difficulty swallowing or vocalizing pain. His health, from muscle density to coat quality, indicated a peak condition predator. Another theory suggested a congenital defect, a malformed hyoid bone or undeveloped vocal cords. But this, too, failed under scrutiny. Cubs born with such conditions rarely survive past adolescence. Yet this male was not just surviving, he was thriving in a region contested by 3 other adult males. If he could not roar, if he could not announce territory, then how did he avoid conflict? That question led researchers towards something far stranger. The pattern of his movements. GPS-tagged prey species, sambar deer, hog deer, wild boar were behaving unpredictably in areas associated with his prints. Some herds migrated early, abandoning grazing zones without any auditory cues. Others froze for extended periods as though sensing an approaching predator they could not locate. Predator-prey interactions depend heavily on sound. Prey listen for twigs, snapping, breathing, low growls. But around this tiger, prey reacted inconsistently, some overly cautious, others strangely calm, as though they could not decode the threat. Rangers also reported unusual kill sites. Most tigers leave traces of their power: disturbed soil, broken branches, splashes of blood. But his kills were disturbingly precise. A clean bite, minimal struggle, almost surgical. It was as if silence itself had become his weapon. The more data emerged, the less sense he made. A male tiger should roar to warn intruders, but none dared challenge him. He should advertise himself to females. Yet mating patterns in the region suggested his presence was acknowledged by tigresses. Something kept the others away, something other than sound. Researchers eventually reached a startling conclusion. This tiger had built a survival strategy entirely outside the species' behavioral blueprint. Whether by instinct, trauma, or a deeper evolutionary twist, he had abandoned the signature roar of his kind and replaced it with something the forest understood in ways humans could not. The eastern Himalayan foothills have always been shaped by patterns, routes that tigers follow for generations, corridors patrolled on predictable loops, and territories carved by the echo of roars. Yet ever since the arrival of the silent stripe, these patterns have begun to fracture. Rangers studying the region noticed something uncanny in the tracking logs. The tiger's paw prints appeared in places separated by steep ridges and deep valleys far too quickly for a single animal to traverse. One morning he was near the river flats. A few hours later, prints of the same size and spacing were discovered almost 6 kilometers away on a hillside path. No camera trap captured him moving between the locations. No territorial calls signaled his passage. It was as though he slipped through the landscape rather than walked across it. But what unsettled biologists most was not the distance he covered, it was the way the forest itself responded to him. Herds of spotted deer shifted their migration routes weeks earlier than usual. Barasingha gathered in tighter groups, a behavior typically seen only when a new apex predator arrives. Even langur monkeys, notorious screamers, fell into eerie silence whenever his tracks were found nearby. As if guided by some instinctive warning they themselves did not understand. Some patterns were subtler. Ranger K.C. Rana observed that tree bark along certain trails bore faint scratch marks, not the deep territorial gouges male tigers carved to broadcast dominance, but delicate, almost hesitant strokes. Not threats, but signals. To whom? No one could tell. Then came the carcasses. Wild boar found lying in stillness, bodies intact, vegetation around them undisturbed, a sambar doe brought down by a single precise bite with almost no chase imprinted in the soil. Tigers are ambush hunters, yes, but even the stealthiest leave signs of struggle. Not him. His kills looked like scenes from which the violence had been carefully removed. Ecologists proposed new hypotheses. Was he relying on ultra-close stalking, eliminating noise entirely to get within striking distance? Or was there something else, something about his silent presence that confused prey, breaking their natural patterns of escape? Some locals said the land reacted before the tiger did. They spoke of nights when dogs howled at nothing, when the river's usual murmur seemed to dim, and when they felt without seeing movement passing behind them, a shift in the air, a shadow without sound, a presence that the forest sensed before humans ever could. The more the silent stripe moved, the more the forest changed around him, until it became impossible to determine which was influencing the other, the tiger, or the land that carried his silence. For most tigers, survival is a symphony of sound. Mothers guide their cubs with soft chuffs, warn them with sharp growls, and teach them boundaries through vocal cues. Young tigers respond instinctively, learning the language of their species long before they master the hunt. But for the silent stripe, this chapter of life seems written differently, if it was written at all. Rangers believe he was once part of a small, scattered litter born deep within a pocket of forest, nearly inaccessible during monsoon months. The region is known for landslides and washed-out trails, a place so isolated that even poachers rarely risk entering it. It is one of the few landscapes where a tiger could grow up unseen, unheard, and unstudied. Yet no one has ever confirmed seeing him as a cub. No mother tigress in the area was reported as unusually quiet. No abandoned juveniles were documented. His early life remains a blank page, one that refuses to reveal whether his silence began at birth or emerged from something harsher. Trauma, separation, or an adaptation carved out of necessity. As he matured, signs of his presence hinted at a creature that understood the forest with unusual precision. Scratch marks on low branches, subtle and calculated, appeared months apart, as though he were mapping routes not for communication but for memory. Muddy banks near watering holes bore deep, deliberate impressions, resting spots where he returned repeatedly. Each visit spaced with almost ritualistic timing. Local stories add another layer. Villagers recall seeing him move alongside the tree line on winter mornings, frost rising around his paws, yet never startling birds, perched only meters away. Some say they watched him observe family groups of elephants or gaur with unexpected calm, as though gauging their rhythms rather than hunting. A few even insist he was seen near tigress territories during mating season. Though no confrontations were recorded, male tigers should roar fiercely to assert themselves. Females should respond with vocal cues. Instead, the silent stripe moved through these spaces like a ghost, acknowledged, but never challenged. What stands out most in accounts of his adulthood is his command of stillness. Tigers rely on power and voice, but he seemed to rely on timing, appearing in the exact moments when the forest's noise dipped, slipping into the natural pauses between wind and water. It was as if he had learned to survive not by dominating the land, but by harmonizing with its quietest rhythms. This strange skill carried him through the vulnerabilities of youth into full maturity. A tiger who grew into adulthood without ever sounding his presence. A male who carved a life from silence and shaped a domain that bent, instinctively, to his unspoken rule. The closest anyone has ever come to understanding the silent stripe began on a fog-drenched evening when Ranger Deepak Thapa was conducting a routine patrol along a narrow ridge overlooking the valley. It was the kind of night when sound should have carried clearly moist air, steady wind, distant calls bouncing across the slope. Yet the forest felt muted, as if every living creature had agreed to hold still. Thapa later said he sensed something, before he saw anything. The quiet changed, he whispered in his report. It became heavier, like the air thickened. His body camera recorded the moment the forest's natural hum faded into a low, unnatural pause. Leaves hung motionless. Even insects went silent. Then, through the drifting fog, a silhouette emerged. A massive tiger stepped onto the path no more than 15 meters ahead. Its stripes glowed faintly in the beam of Thapa's flashlight, the muscles beneath its coat shifting with liquid precision. There was no growl, no warning rumble, not even the audible exhale tigers usually produce when startled. The footage shows Thapa freeze, breathing shallowly, the camera trembling slightly in his hands. The tiger raised its head, meeting his gaze. What is most striking about the recording is not the visual, it is the sound. Or rather, the absence of it. No footfall, no branch crack, no breath. The silent stripe simply existed in the frame like a shape cut out of the night. For several seconds, the tiger stood completely still. Its ears flicked once. Not toward Thapa, but toward the valley below, as though monitoring some deeper pulse of the land. Then it opened its jaws wide, classic territorial posture, a roar forming in body language if not in voice. Yet the forest remained unchanged. No echo, no vibration, not a whisper of sound. Its mouth closed again, its tail lifted in a slow arc, a gesture both calm and commanding. And then, with a fluid step, it turned away. Not a rustle, not a crack. It walked back into the fog as though slipping between worlds. Only after the tiger vanished did the forest breathe again. Crickets resumed their song. A wind brushed the ridge. Thapa exhaled with a sharp, involuntary gasp, realizing he had been holding his breath for far too long. He later confessed to colleagues that the encounter left him shaken not by fear, but by the feeling that he had met something nature had not intended him to understand. He wasn't just quiet, Thapa said. It felt like the forest itself was quiet for him. That night became the centerpiece of ongoing research. But to the villagers and rangers who already believed the silent stripe was something beyond ordinary, the encounter confirmed what they had always suspected. Some predators do not conquer the forest with noise. Some rewrite its silence. In a world shaped by dominance, noise is often mistaken for power. Roars, clashes, territorial declarations. These are the signatures of survival, written into the biology of great predators, yet the silent stripe leaves behind a different kind of signature, one carved not in sound, but in the stillness he commands. As researchers and rangers revisited the sites he frequented, a subtle pattern emerged. Wherever this tiger walked, life reorganized itself not in fear, but in adjustment. Herbivores shifted trails. Smaller predators paused their routines. Even rival males altered their boundaries, as though conceding to a presence they could sense but not confront. No battles, no vocal challenges, no blood-soaked markers of dominance. Only the quiet bending of the forest's natural order. It raises a question that unsettles even the most seasoned biologists. Could survival evolve through silence? If his condition was the result of injury, he adapted with impossible efficiency. If it was congenital, then nature produced a mutation that defied conventional wisdom. And if it was something more, an instinct sharpened by isolation, loss, or an early trauma, then the silent stripe represents a path evolution rarely takes, but never entirely closes. The villagers interpret his existence through a different lens. To them, he is a reminder that the forest holds stories older than science. They speak of animals born under certain winds, shaped by the mountain's breath, destined to move differently. In their view, the tiger's silence is not a disadvantage but a kind of inheritance, a gift only the land itself could bestow. For the rangers, his legacy is practical yet profound. He forces them to question assumptions long considered fact, that power must be broadcast, that threats must be voiced, that a creature without its defining sound is broken. The silent stripe proves otherwise. He is not a diminished tiger. He is a variation the forest has accepted, perhaps even welcomed, and for the forest, He is a reminder that dominance does not always echo. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it steps lightly across ridgelines and leaves no tremor in its wake. Sometimes the most commanding figure in the wild is the one who rewrites the rules simply by refusing to follow them. In the end, his story leaves us with a quiet challenge. If a creature built to roar can survive, can even rule without raising its voice, then what else in the natural world have we misunderstood simply because it did not announce itself loudly enough? The silent stripe disappears into the mist, as he always does, returning to the hush that protects him. His silence lingers, not as an absence, but as a presence, for some mysteries do not seek answers, they simply invite us to listen differently.